This is Robert Estrin, and you're watching livingpianos.com. Thanks so much for being here today for a really important subject. I can't tell you how many people have struggled with the metronome, and they've come to me, how do you play with the metronome? And it could be a really daunting task, particularly if you're not accustomed to playing with the metronome. And with the tips I'm going to give you today are not just for those of you who are new to the metronome, but those of you who practice with the metronome incessantly and wonder, how do you stay with the metronome? Well, first of all, I'm going to start with, how do you even figure out how to set this thing? I mean, where do you figure it? How do you know? Well, first of all, there is some great software out there where you can have apps on your phone where you can just tap the tempo and it finds it for you. And that can be incredibly valuable, but how do you even establish the tempo? Well, I'm going to take Bach's Minuet in G as an example of how you would figure out how to set the metronome. Let's say you're playing Minuet in G of Bach. And you're wondering, how do I know how to set the metronome to that? Well, if you can tap your foot or tap along, or just imagine you just played it. Da 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 dee dum bum ba da 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 da. So you have to establish the beat first. Then you turn your metronome on and try to match it. Let's see, I got another one over here. One of these worked. And that sounds right, but we try it and see if it seems right. And maybe that feels a little bit too fast, so you could always turn it down a little bit and try it again. So that's basically how to set the metronome. But how the heck do you stay with it? And I've seen people struggle so much with this. And it's a very simple technique that, if you remember what I'm about to tell you, it's going to make a world of difference in staying with the metronome. When the metronome speeds up, speed up with it. When the metronome slows down, slow down with it. And I bet when you're playing with the metronome, you could swear that it's speeding up and slowing down. Although, in reality, it's you who are playing not with the metronome, but it feels like it's going slower sometimes, doesn't it? Wouldn't you swear it's slowing down sometimes or speeding up? So all you have to do is follow whatever it seems to be doing. If it seems to be getting faster, you get faster. If it seems to be getting slower, you get slower. And if, as long as you do that, you will stay with the metronome. Now, when you're playing with the metronome, if you're not absolutely precisely with it, and you make these minute adjustments by going a little faster with it or a little slower with it to get back on, that's okay. If you ever gain or lose a beat, you must stop and figure out if maybe the metronome is set a little too fast for you. Try a slightly slower speed to see if you can stay with it, because you can never gain or lose a beat. However, if you just nuance slightly behind or ahead, you might just finish the phrase and go back and see if you can do it more faithfully on the beat and practice a number of times until that ebb and flow around the beat is minimized and you can stay spot on with the metronome, which is, of course, the goal. But you don't necessarily have to stop every single time you're slightly off. Instead, get used to adjusting, following whatever the metronome seems to be doing. And that's the answer for staying with the metronome. First of all, once again to recap, establish the speed by tapping your foot or tapping your hand and then finding that speed on your metronome. Or better off, download an app that you can just tap in the tempo and then it'll find it for you. And from there you can adjust further to nuance it to exactly the right speed. And as you're playing, if it feels just too fast or it's just way too slow to be able to play with, of course adjust the speed. But once you lock it in, then play, and whatever the metronome seems to do, that's what you're going to do, and that's how you'll stay with the metronome. I encourage all of you to try this. If you've had problems with the metronome, try these techniques and see how they work for you. Again, I'm Robert Estrin. This is livingpianos.com, your online piano resource. We'll see you next time.